Okay, going to start with the Times this morning. It's Kevin McStay, Provincial Championships nearing an end. And then they also have an interview with James McCarthy. And McCarthy definitely brushes aside all talk of a Dublin 5 in a row. How do they survive not talking about 5 in a row all the time? This is the thing, right? Seasoned watchers of sport think that 5 in a row in GAA is too much because it's too much. That's the limit. Because mostly, your buddies, your pals, your supporters in the street talk about nothing else.
Sorry, what's your point? That's why we're all talking about 5 in a row is because everybody in the street is talking about 5 in a row.
No, you can't do it because the players keep getting tormented by it.
Well, that's not the kind of end reason why it might not happen. It'll be because another team comes along that's good enough to stop them, or because they might mess up themselves. But it's the reason why they mess up, because there's too much pressure on them, because people are on the street.
Yes,
I don't know.
That's the logic. We got there eventually.
Like you're obviously being sarcastic.
Not really. So the whole point is that you think this is the best team in the country, right? And that they've already won their 5 in a row was already stopped. Now they're in the middle of a 7 or whatever it is. And so no team is actually good enough to beat them.
Yes.
So the only thing that's going to beat them is
themselves.
Some kind of frailty, psychological frailty, which there's been no sign of to date at any point, even when they've been trailing deep into stoppage time. And so that frailty comes from the constant nitpicking, the constant barrage of attention. Then, in fairness, it must be a little bit overwhelming.
It must be. I'm not sure actually if it has to be completely overwhelming for them. I'm sure they might get a little bit annoyed here or there, but why hasn't it happened to them before? The wave of Dublin becoming
so far ahead of everybody,
becoming unbelievably successful again. This sort of stuff has been spoken about for a while now. The idea of becoming the best team in the country, the idea of distancing Dublin from the rest after years and years in the doldrums, where Dublin were a bit behind the rest. That comes with its own set of circumstances, its own hype. They got to their first All-Ireland final in 2011 since 1995. Let's not forget, it wasn't just their first All-Ireland win since '95. It was their first All-Irelands. They managed to handle that hype pretty well. I think they can handle this hype just to the same level. I think it's nonsense that the hype will get to this Dublin team, and that'll be the reason why the 5 in a row doesn't happen. It will be because of a team good enough to beat them.
Well, they're not underdogs for that game against Kerry?
But it's still Dublin in an All-Ireland final. It's still a difference
between being underdogs and overwhelming favourites to do a thing that no team in history has ever done.
It's different for sure.
The scale of those achievements are very different.
Well, they aren't. I mean, it depends where you're coming from. They've been favourites for the last 4 years. They go into every All-Ireland with an increase in pressure and an increase in pressure and an increase in pressure. And sure, this 5 in a row is a very, very special thing. I think it will happen. And I think it's because a lot of these players ultimately are resistant to that. Have you heard of anybody speak about the pressures of being a Dublin footballer in the last couple of years?
Who's going to say it?
Well, former footballers. There's already been a couple of retirements.
Yeah, but they're all...
Or there's at least a little glance into what they really think.
Right? So you think there's no chance of it happening? We should stop talking about the Gaelic Football Championship this year?
When did I say that?
Do you think there's any chance of it happening?
I don't think it will happen.
Right. Go on, what's in the...
No, I don't think they will be stopped, but the 5 in a row will happen. The Irish Independent goes with Dub selector Kennedy faces lengthy ban, disruptive conduct charge on the cards for former Galway hurler after bizarre Nolan Park incident. I might become a professional. The story of the unemployed 46-year-old debutant Waterford goalkeeper, that's Darren Mulhern, who played in the Munster Football Championship against Clare at the weekend. And O'Gara makes next move as Van Gran insists nothing is amiss at Munster. It seems Ronan O'Gara is going to go to La Rochelle.
Yeah, you should get suspended if you walk onto the field of play and interfere, right?
You should do, and he will do.
That's the right thing.
It is the right thing, and it's definitely going to happen. Now,
we should stop mentors from coming onto the field because it creates a dangerous situation. It's precedent. It's these games, you need to lay down the law and say, you cannot walk onto the field of play and interfere with what's happening. Because if this starts happening, here's the thing, if the ban is 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, what's to stop the guy standing beside the umpire from getting out and touching the ball over the crossbar with a minute left to go in a game? Where does it stop?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the sanctity of the playing field is supposed to be the sanctity of the playing field.
Well, Colin Keys is making that point in the Indo this morning, and John Fogarty is making the point in the Examiner this morning that it probably needs to be scaled back. It definitely needs to be scaled back in terms of the role of the Mayor Fauna, this mystical creature that is allowed to just crawl onto the pitch. There was talks years ago, well, by years ago I mean around 2006, that they would get rid of this entirely and that it might just be the manager in a technical area and all that sort of thing, and that there was a good bit of blowback from Kilkenny, especially because the GEA apparently didn't realise the pressures of being a selector with an inter-county team. And Colm Keys does make the very valid point. Jurgen Klopp didn't exactly need a Mayor Forna running onto the pitch at Anfield last week. Like, noisy scenarios are just a part of sport. Communicating messages, doing that before the game or at half-time is the challenge. Or maybe if you want to be cute about it, allow your medical team to do so if somebody is genuinely injured, whatever it may be. But yeah, we're going to see a ban here for Greg Kennedy, and it's a deserved one. But
you had some sympathy for him.
Yes, we had a bit of an argument out in the office yesterday, Tommy and I. Like, sympathy is probably the wrong word, because I do believe he should be banned. But like, they were, I'm sure there's a bit of a rush to kind of condemn how disgraceful this action was. First of all, let us remember what actually happened here. He caught a ball. Selectors have done far worse things. There was a video that did the rounds there last year, the year before, of a selector who actually shouldered a player out of the way, who actually physically confronted another player, which is worse. Granted, just while I'm going through this, I'm not for 1 second actually standing up for the guy. I'm just saying we need to keep a little bit of perspective here. We also need to keep into perspective the fact that the referee had his back turned to play. TJ Reid took a quick free. That free would have been brought back if that Kilkenny player actually caught the ball, or it should have been brought back. It would have actually been not as bad, but it would have been bad had the referee allowed that play to progress and Kilkenny put the ball over the bar. There's no way a quick free should have been allowed in that situation, especially because the referee was speaking to Chris Crummy at the time. So you're taking a defender out of the picture, taking a defender away from the possibility of actually stopping the short free. He should be banned. He should be banned.
You're totally defending the action, though. What, like, that's all. Oh, but that's why he did what he did.
There's more nuance to the idea than there's a good and there's a bad, and that's exactly it. It was a bad thing to do, don't get me wrong. But there are degrees of badness, sure. You have to accept that.
Yeah, and so that's why the disciplinary process exists. There are different scales of what you get suspended for, but like any tolerance of players, of somebody who isn't a player getting involved in the playing of the game, like, how do you know the referee would have called it back? How do you know the referee wouldn't have just turned around and gone, yeah, okay, fair enough?
Well, I think that would have been unfair in Dublin.
But like, that's up for the referee to decide. That's not for the Dublin selector to decide, and that's not for us to.
I know it's not. I know it's.
We don't know what can happen in the future.
And I'm not saying that. Yes, he was right to take it into his hands. He was wrong to do what he did.
Would you do the same thing?
I'm just saying No, I wouldn't. I'm just saying let's keep it in perspective here. It's not a disgraceful act.
You said disgraceful. You're the only person who uses the word disgraceful. It's like that's a straw man where it's just like no one thinks it's disgraceful. It's like, but you can't do it. It's like the worst form of intervention, and you're going to start seeing, like, imagine this is the GAA, right? So there'll be under 14 games where there'll be dads running out and catching balls and going, wow, I'm going to take my 6 months suspension.
Really?
Why not? Like, why not? And yes, of course there will. Anyway, the Sun.
I'm looking forward to that development at underage hurling, where there's just parents, like, they're bringing a rule where you're allowed 2 parents to kick the ball for certain games and stuff.
Ringers.
Yeah, that'd be the way the game should go.
Shock for champions. Ban City. UEFA panel will push for Champ League Axe. And then club to get the Reddies. There you go. I was looking at it. Red dies. Anyway, Reddies. Club to get the Reddies. Liverpool have vowed to back Jurgen Klopp with all the millions he needs to land the title. All the millions. Spurs 10 million loan for Bale. This is Owen's dream scenario from yesterday. It was like, what if? Could Gareth Bale end up back there? I mean, maybe he's the one that they need to put bums on seats. He would get north of 600 grand a week at Real, but would have to accept less than half elsewhere. So Real will take an offer where the club pays 250 grand a week for Bale's wages plus a 10 million fee for the season. I mean, if you know Real Madrid have no interest in playing him again, you sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, and it's like 11:59 on the transfer deadline. You go, here's our offer, and that's it. Why would you give him 10 million now? Who else is going to give 10 million for Gareth Bale? Inter Milan, Juventus.
I think the list is longer than just Spurs. I think it's a risky move waiting until the end of the summer. I know you made the point that Gareth Bale perhaps has no interest in playing high-level football, given he's got that, he's got 3 years left in his deal.
Yeah,
it's a long time. The Irish Examiner goes with, I don't think anything is going on. That's a quote from Johan van Graan, who rubbishes talk of rift as Flannery and Jones depart. John McHenry says playing second fiddle to revitalise Tiger won't sit well with Rory. The USPGA Championship is this weekend. Mike Quirk is writing about coaching and kids. It says, step outside your sporting comfort zone to see life through a child's eyes.
Gavin, FAI staff are rattled. This is a Paul Lennon story. League of Ireland chief Fran Gavin has admitted that FAI staff have been rattled by the deepening crisis at the football body. Speaking at the launch of the new Unite Union Champions Cup competition to be staged in November between the title winners from both sides of the border, Gavin gave an insight into morale at the association. And then Ole plays it cool. Sorry. Man United are preparing 145 million double swoop for Kalidou Koulibaly and Nicolas Pepe. Will they get them both?
Well, you'd imagine, even at this point, Manchester United is an attractive proposition for a Napoli and a Lille player, which they are respectively, that it is still a step up for them in terms of their career. Certainly it will be financially. Koulibaly has been somebody that's been linked with Premier League clubs for quite some time now in terms of being a reliable option, perhaps at centre-back. Manchester United need somebody in that position. They also need somebody in several other positions. And the gossip columns are going to be filled with Manchester United links every single morning between now and transfer deadline day.
It's true. Just one point on this. Dublin selector Greg Kennedy could be facing a ban for the controversial catch that denied Kilkenny a goal chance in Saturday's Leinster Championship match at Nolan Park, is the Carlo Kane story in the back of the Star this morning. Tommy Walsh made a good point that in the early throw-in on Sunday, the Waterford supporters didn't really get behind Waterford. It was that dead heat of the afternoon. It was too early for them, and Waterford needed to be in front or they needed to start a row. And he said he felt the same at Nolan Park on Saturday night until Greg Kennedy intervened, which got everybody in the crowd outraged and made Kilkenny suddenly get their dander up. And from that point on, the match swung. The momentum that you love swung back in favour of...
You're the one who mentioned momentum.
Swung back in favour of Kilkenny.
Or, to play into your idea, momentum didn't play any part at all, and it was actually to do with perhaps a couple of tactical shifts, to do with Kilkenny getting their act together in the second half. Perhaps a selector catching a ball had nothing to do with Kilkenny actually winning the game on Saturday, and they were actually the better team over the course of the 70 minutes. I know it's a completely out of this world idea, but perhaps that's actually the reason, because I heard that point being made in Sky Sports the other day as well. And of course Brian Cody was enraged with him at that moment, and you shouldn't poke a cat.
And the crowd didn't matter, and the crowd didn't get involved, didn't turn Nolan Park back into the bear pit that it used to be.
I know. This is not what you're saying, but if anybody actually thinks that Kilkenny wouldn't have won that game had Greg Kennedy not handled that ball, I think you're out of your mind. Like, it's,
the games don't have turning points.
Of course, the turning point. I don't think this selector catching a ball was the turning point in this game. I think the turning point would be that Kilkenny are actually still a better hurling team than Dublin, and they were going to win this game regardless.
Dublin were going pretty well at the time.
They were going pretty well at the time. They sure were. They sure were. I just don't like. Again, I'm not defending the guy, but I just think the whole idea of how important this was has been overplayed a small bit. The back page of the Herald is Rory's a huge plus. Prodigal dub in good shape, says James McCarthy, and FAI staff rattled by scandals, says Gavin.
Okay, so the Times Ireland edition. Again, staff rocked by recent FAI turmoil is the John Fallon story. Brighton looked to Potter after Houghton axed Graham Potter, the Swansea City manager, will be interviewed for the job at Brighton and Hove Albion within the next 24 hours. Didn't realise that Chris Houghton had nothing really to do with the recruitment policy at Brighton, so he must be feeling a little bit pissed off with the quality of players that he had to deal with, that he managed to get through 2 seasons in the Champions League, or in the Premier League. And then O'Gara agrees to join La Rochelle staff. Agrees is in inverted commas there, so that's Kieran O'Reilly's story. He's going to be the replacement for Xavier Garbajosa, and he's going to be linking up again with John O'Gibbs. So La Rochelle's a very nice chichi part of France where you'd be living on the beach. It's a nice lifestyle.
Have you been?
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world.
Everybody just obviously gets the ferry there and drives through it, but there's obviously stuff to see there as well. No. Doesn't the ferry go into La Rochelle?
No.
I'm thinking of a completely different place.
Le Havre.
I don't know. I thought maybe La Rochelle is on. Can you not get like a Cork to La Rochelle ferry?
Maybe you can.
I don't know. That's
yeah, you used to be able to Cork La Rochelle. Jeez, it's like a beautiful part of the world.
It's on the west coast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the Atlantic coast. Can you get the ferry to there? I don't know if you can or not. Cork to Roscoff. Cork to La Rochelle is like the train and the boat and the... Anyway.
Now, Cork to Roscoff makes sense. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Ole flips at flops. He's so upset with Stars he cancels his season review, and Munster did everything to keep duo. That's the latest line from the camp down in Munster.
That was so bad, we're not going to talk about it. Doesn't seem like the best way for them to move forward at Man United. Ole's £125 million United rebuild. And that's not a lot of money these days. That's they think that it's going to get you. Is it the same players that we're talking about here? Koulibaly and Pepe, yeah. And title pain is forgotten as Van der Vaart eyes Euro glory and FAI workers are rattled by Debac.
The other kind of piece of transfer news that would have been inside the Star this morning is that Manchester United could be going in for Adrien Rabiot from Paris Saint-Germain, 200 grand a week. He's looking for, and Barcelona have already kind of turned their noses up at that, so Manchester United linked with him. Back page of The Guardian is greatest of all time. They asked a question about this Manchester City team, comparing them with the likes of Chelsea in 05-06, Arsenal 03-04, the Tottenham team of 60-61, Manchester United 67-68, and Liverpool all the way from 75 to 83. And then Jamie Jackson's story here is a long road back. Herrera says Manchester United must look to Liverpool for inspiration.
Okay, the Racing Post for me is hands off. Lock-and-Chope Lawrence is a filly money can't buy, says owner Dance. So owner John Dance has revealed he's resisted overtures from the huge bloodstock empires to keep hold of Lawrence, who's reportedly better than ever before her return to action on Saturday. General 5-1 second favourite for the Lock-in Stakes at Newbury has earned £1.48 million in prize money since he bought her for $220,000 as a yearling. So that's not a bad bit of profit. And then, you know, she'll have some offspring, and hopefully those offspring will be good and you'll get loads of money for those too.
Final newspaper for me is the Daily Telegraph, and their sports section leads with a photograph of Chris Hughton. Brighton rocked is the headline. Hughton brutally sacked with Swansea's Potter set to take over. Okay,
we have an Irish news, I think, for you this morning as well. It's about time we played our football, says Grugan, and Johnson ruled out for down. And the New York Times is the only other thing that we should have talked about really this morning. Tariq Panja has a story in it saying UEFA investigators want to boot Manchester City out of the Champions League. So they're seeking a ban for at least one season as a result of, this is weird. So Man City have already paid a fine for breaching financial fair play rules. About 60 million quid was the fine, which seems weird given that the whole point of financial fair play is that you're not supposed to be able to buy yourself into success. If you can buy yourself out of the trouble that you've caused, then what's the point of it? But anyway, they did that, and that was supposed to be the end of that. But after the Football Leaks documents came out, it appeared as if Manchester City had been creating a network of different ways to try, and this is what the allegations coming from Football Leaks said, to try and find different ways to get out of the case and to also make sure that they were able to continue to pay players what they wanted to, and somehow it not necessarily appear on the books. Manchester City deny all of this, of course, so we need to stress that they deny all of this, and they said there's an orchestrated campaign against them. But what the current recommendations coming out, according to Tariq Panja, are, it's not that they be found guilty for the original sin, it's that actually the documents that they provided in the first case weren't accurate. So it's kind of a technicality that in breaching these rules and then in saying that they didn't breach the rules, the documentation that they used to prove that they hadn't breached the rules was incorrect. So it's like filing an incorrect tax return. I suppose maybe it is almost the same as the original sin, but it's not the original sin that they're getting banned for, it's the cover-up. And the recommendation, it looks like, is going to be these things, they come out before they're actually made official. Somebody has spoken to Tariq Panja. Obviously it's a very well-sourced story, and you wonder if that's a kite being flown by somebody saying, what would the response from the rest of the world be if we were to say, let's ban Manchester City, the best team in Europe, from Europe's best competition? What would happen?
Yeah.
I think you're going to have like every club in Europe going, well, every club in Europe bar the guilty ones going, yeah, kick them out. And it'll be interesting to see who's on their side.
Yeah, I would suspect there wouldn't be too many on their side. Like if you sat all the chairmen of all the big clubs in Europe around the table right now and asked them to say, are you happy that Manchester City are doing well, or are you nonplussed, or are you sad? I think most of them would be nonplussed at the very least. I think they're still viewed as the football outsiders, that they've bought their way into the situation, as have all their peers around Europe. Let's face it, they've all got big money to spend. But Manchester City's acceleration has been a lot quicker, and you're not one of us. You can't sit with us, is how they view Manchester City. If you're guilty of the same thing, though, or you don't want them thrown out at all. Well, that's the thing. We need some sympathy for these guys. Well, that's the thing, but yeah, it's just some documentation. This is just form filling. That's all. Or just get the football leaks and make sure nothing ever gets leaked ever again.
Well, they apparently, in the New York Times story, it says that they found the guy
In Portugal.
I'd missed that part of the story.
Yeah, I don't know where he is right now or who he's at the mercy of, but...
One of the other things in the stories in the papers this morning is obviously what's going to happen at Manchester United. Paul Pogba is the lightning rod around the Manchester United fans, and Patrice Evra has been chatting to Gary Neville on Sky Sports this morning. He thinks Pogba is getting way too much slack from the fans and that there's another player who deserves it a bit more.
I have nothing against him but Sanchez. When I saw the deal of Sanchez, that's when I say the Man United history just go down. Because he had Manchester City. They were offering, of course, less money, but he was going to play a better football than Man United. I'm sorry about that, because City playing a better football. The manager, Guardiola, so he will improve. So I want to know which reason, for real, he go to Manchester United, you know. Don't tell me he go because he loved Manchester United when he was kid, or it's two reasons. Maybe the money, and also because maybe he want to be the number one. You know, he go to Manchester, he say he's not any big player, he will take the number 7 and be the star. So that's why it's not like I'm protecting Paul. But when people, like yesterday, you know, the incident happened with the fan, they're killing Paul. He's the best scorer, best assist. I know you can maybe question sometimes his leadership and everything. Maybe the last few games you want Paul to score the winning goal. So that's why maybe people criticize Paul right now. But he's been the best player of the season. But just because it's Paul Pogba, he's doing his haircut, his dance, his Instagram and everything, people will just criticize him, but they forget the player it is.
Yeah, Patrice Evra throwing Alexis Sanchez under the bus. It's hard to take Patrice Evra serious after he kissed the chicken breast.
He didn't just kiss the chicken breast, he had a rather lewd relationship with the chicken, I think.
It's hard, isn't it?
It's fair to say. It's very, very, very tough to...
The mental image is difficult to shake.
It's also very tough to get that image out of my head now that you've reminded me of that.
No, chicken breast, like.
I thought you were going to say it's hard to take him seriously after some of his performances in the ITV studio last summer, which is also true, but yeah, the chicken breast thing was far worse. Like when you talk about Alexis Sanchez being thrown under the bus, I don't think Patrice Evra actually needs to grab him and shove him in front of the bus. I think like he's actually placed himself under that bus fairly squarely himself by kind of a chain of really, really poor performances on the back of an outstanding performance from his agent in terms of getting him that contract.
Did you hear the bit about at the training ground, wherever he would stand in training, there was a door, and inside the door there was a fridge, and so he'd be cold at training, so they moved the fridge for him. Did you read that bit?
Sanchez?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like, maybe just tell him to warm up a little bit, you know, he's a professional athlete. Without, you know, they were like, oh yeah, of course, we'll definitely fix that.
Because he's obviously in the sunny climes of Manchester during the Premier League season, which predominantly takes place in winter. The fridge was making are you sure it wasn't like a cryotherapy chamber or something like that?
It could have been something like that, but like it wasn't, you know, it wasn't so cold that anybody else had complained about it ever. That's
an absolutely extraordinary... I completely missed that. I hope it's true now, because I hadn't actually seen that piece of information. Like, they do a Gareth Bale in this, don't they, Manchester United? As in, they take whatever sort of financial... any sort of money they can get to take some of Alexis Sanchez off their books. Just make sure he just doesn't have to show up anymore.
If you're a League of Ireland team, do you like...
pay him more to sit at home.
Here, listen, Man United, can we have him? We'll take him off your books.
Like that, I think even the presence of Alexis Sanchez at this point is almost as damaging as the financial impact that he's having, because it's the two things married together. When his teammates see this guy, like...
It's whatever he's just said. It's like, hang on a second, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
And so everybody in the dressing room thinks that. It's like, he's not trying to leg it, he's getting paid 5 times more than I am.
Yeah. Like it's a shambles of a situation for you to be a teammate of Alexis Sanchez in that dressing room at the moment. Like the thing is, okay, like... who is that football club that actually said to Alexis Sanchez, come and bring your talents to wherever we are? Like, realistically, if he stays in the Premier League, who is he playing for now?
Like, maybe one of the teams who are coming up decides to take a punt and put some bums on seat for the first 5 or 6 games of the season, and the season ticket sales outweigh the whatever. Say you've got to pay him 150 of the 450 or whatever it is a week. It's still upsetting the balance of your changing room and upsetting the balance of your... spending, it doesn't make any sense. Like, so it has to be a different country, and I mean, there's a good chance at this stage that it might have to be back at home, right? That he has to go home and just kind of be the returning superstar, and that's fine. Like, it'll be a great end to a career, but or maybe he just retires and gives up the money. Nah,
he goes to China.
Not a chance.
He goes to China at some point.
Yeah, maybe China's the only place that you could. But is that money real anymore? Are they all getting paid? Is that all? Like, is that house of cards not about to come crumbling down?
I'm sure it is, but Alexis Sanchez has found a way of enduring a falling house of cards quite well. He will do a Carlos Tevez eventually, though, and go home, and he'll kind of be
good again.
He'll be welcomed home as a hero.
Didn't Carlos Tevez get good again when he went home?
He did actually.
For a while.